The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Did you know that you could create custom tasks and activities in workbooks? So if you've got a need to track specific types of interactions with your customers and clients, then this is the session for you. Hello, my name is Tim Wilmot, and I'm joined by my colleague Peter Johnson. Our company, Wizard Systems, we're a leading independent CRM solution supplier of systems like workbooks, and we help organizations use these solutions to help improve their sales, marketing, and customer service productivity. So thanks for joining us this morning for our little mini workbooks training session. We hold these regular sessions normally every week, just focusing on different topics in and around workbooks, different subjects every week. And this one is all about customizing these different types of activities and tasks in workbooks. In fact, you can customize lots of other areas in workbooks, but this will be just an overview of this capability. Duration of this session will be about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour or so, so we're just sort of giving a flavor of what's possible. Our company, Wizard Systems, we offer many extensive help options, consultancy service options if you want to explore those with us. Now, the audio part of this presentation is one way only. If you've got any questions, please type those into the question box on your meeting control panel, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. This call is being recorded as well. After the presentation, you will get an email from our system, normally about a day or so after we conclude. And that'll give you a link to the recording, and we'll put it on our YouTube channel as well. Just before we get started, brief mention about Wizard Systems. So we are a long-standing supplier of a number of different CRM solutions, including workbooks. We've implemented well over 3,000 systems, and we provide the complete package, the complete service around these different solutions. We don't just supply the system. We very much want a relationship with you to help you get the most out of your investment and the system now and going forward. So we offer extensive training options during lockdown. That's obviously online at the moment, but when it's safe to do so, we will be opening up our couple of training facilities in Bristol, or we can come and see you, and we have a help desk service as well. So let me now hand over to my colleague Peter, and he will take you through this customization. Over to you, Pete.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Tim. Just check with you that you can hear me and also see my screen.
We just got your slide at the moment, I think.
Yeah. So I'm just going to change that. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so good morning to everybody. As Tim mentioned, I'm Peter Johnson. I'm going to show you around the activities area in terms of looking at customizing the screen so that you can record particular types of activities. Out of the box, if you do go and have a new setup, or you've had us implement that for you, very often you'll just get a few tasks that you can record against contacts. I've gone from the start new area here, and I can create a phone call or a task. You've probably got things like to-dos and such like. You can see there's a few extra ones in here. Now the idea of this list is it's also available from a contact or any other record in the system where you're recording activities. If I go into a record here I opened earlier, Steve, of course I can go from the new menu and select a number of these activities, or of course direct from the activities tab of whatever record you're looking at and be able to record other things other than a phone call or a task. You can see here I've got a project activity. So I guess this is a good example of showing you a couple of different types of screens. So the idea this morning I'm going to show is show you what they look like and show you how you can change these. And then I'm going to show you one I created just prior to this session, which might be quite useful to you, and then guide you around the areas that I used to produce this. So let's have a look at these. So I'm going to open up a phone call. Now, many of you are familiar with recording activities within workbooks. We've covered that in a simple way in some of these sessions, in fact. So this is the ability to record in the system a phone call. So a conversation you've had where you're going to record perhaps a subject line of what the phone call is about in this example, and in the description area some information about the conversation that you've had, and of course you could create follow-up tasks and activities around that. But let's have a look at one of these others, probably one that you haven't seen and haven't got. This is one of the customized ones, project activity. Now, the reason this was added to this system is that the organization that wanted this really wanted to start tracking information about some projects that they work on. So they go out on site, they deliver services around these projects. So here you can see it's similar, I would suggest, to the phone call screen with some details on here, but we've got some extra fields and drop downs and pick lists. So if you can imagine an engineer going out on site to a particular organization and working on a particular project. Now, in this example, they're using cases as projects, so they've got this new site installation. The subject was maybe a site visit to test and audit, let's say. Yeah, oh, let's just so here I've got project hours. So have we used some hours for this? Yes, so we used 5 hours on this particular project. Is this service chargeable? So you can see these pick lists and fields relate to the specific type of activity we're looking at. We can even record down here some agreed hourly rate, maybe £15 an hour. Was there some mileage? Let's put 36 in there, and some expenses maybe that are involved in this project delivery. And you can see here, of course, you could have some information about the notes and the audit, all as expected. Yeah, just put a few notes in here, and you can see I can save and close this in the normal way that you would another activity. So the idea of this session is really to show you that you can have many different activities. This can make things a lot easier for users to fill in, more consistency within the system, and of course record and report. So whenever you're recording this information, it's going into the system. I think in fact I did open up a project report here. And you can see here, this is a type of report just based on some projects that they're working on, and you can see days ordered, expenses. You can see all of this would be calculated based on information that's recorded in this very simple way. So perhaps another example in here. Let me go to another one in here, start new, and you can see here I've got a supplier security assessment. Now this is one that came up during the implementation of GDPR. One of your responsibilities to look after your data is to check your suppliers. I think that has to be done annually or as a set period at the very least under the GDPR regulations. So in here you might go to a supplier record, click on supplier security assessment, and you can see it's a task screen. That's very obvious by the little green icon in the top left corner, but you can see all of this in here is the information that you collect and record for a supplier assessment. Now I don't know whether you can see here we've got this type field. In actual fact, in the system, that's what changes these screens. So in the background, and I'll show you in a moment, I've got a couple of layouts. So I've got this supplier assessment screen. I've also got this layout for a phone call. and it really is this field that loads that up based on a rule. So if this field says phone call, in fact, let me show you. If I save that, you can see it will appear as a normal phone call screen. However, if I do change that type back to a supplier security assessment and choose save, you can see it loads the screen that's associated with the text in this type field. You don't have to use the type field, you can use anything, a little checkbox or anything at all to change the screen according to the way that you want to see it. Now, I thought for this session I would come up with a particular example that I thought might be quite useful, and certainly in this lockdown period, although we're coming out of lockdown now in 2020 following the COVID crisis, many of you are doing online meetings, remote meetings, web calls, that type of thing. So what I thought, and against this example, you can see if I go to record, I've got the option to track a web meeting. So I can schedule this or track it as a recorded activity. And when I go in here, you can see it's actually very similar to the phone call screen, except what I've done is got rid of the description and put an area in so you could paste in any online chat text. So if you've got a Skype call, that type of thing, you could just copy that into here. And if it's a session such as this, you could just put the URL of the recording. So anybody visiting that record and want to see and go back over the web meeting, and you can see here again, I've used this type field to add web meeting. So let me briefly show you how I created this as an option. There's a few different component parts. First of all, I was needing to add a new entry into this pick list called web meetings. For those with admin rights and that are familiar with this type of work, you do go into the configuration area, and to add to that pick list, you just go and add to the type pick list that's available. So it was actually this one here. So I went in, added the value into my pick list down here called web meeting. Must be on the next page. There we go. Yeah, web meeting. So I added to that pick list. Really straightforward, nothing unusual there. The next thing I had to do was create a screen that I can customize. So my initial thought was it's very close to a phone call. So in the system, and for those that are familiar with tracking and changing the layouts of screens, I actually went into a particular area where you can customize layouts. I went to the form layouts. Now you can see here there are many form layouts. In your system you've probably only got one or two. So I actually just took the phone call one and copied it. So I actually in here just chose the button copy form layout when I was on the phone call, and I renamed it web meeting. And of course, with a web meeting, if I go back to that screen just for a moment, I needed a couple of extra fields. So in the system, I added some extra fields. In the normal way, new field, I added a URL field. I also added a multi-line text field. That was to cover both this hosted recorded URL field and this online chat. And then I applied those fields to just the web meeting layout that I created earlier. So I'm going through this quite swiftly, but it really, for those that are familiar with customizing workbooks, will kind of see where I'm going. And of course, if you need some training and or us to do this for you, it's very simple for us to get this done on your behalf. But you can see here, I've created the layout, I've added some fields to that layout, and last of all, the bit that puts it in the menus here. So if I go to Start, New, Task and Web Meeting, this is called a template. a record template. And what that actually does is open up the record, but also just pre-fill a type field. Now that type field, if I go and open the layout, this one here called web meeting, which includes those fields, I've actually applied a rule in here and say only show this layout if the type field says web meeting. And the record template allows me to pre-fill that and also make it available in the menu here under new task. So this menu is available because I've created a record template, and within that record template I chose to pre-fill the type field with the text web meeting. These are really useful actually if you want to make it easy for users to pre-fill records straight away, so they've got a particular type of information. You can go in and populate all of those. So I hope that wasn't too quick for you. As Tim mentioned, this is intended as an overview of how it's done, and also really just to show you the capability of having in workbooks many different types of activities that are quick and easy for users to populate the system with some consistency and speed and low effort. Okay, so Tim, back to you, I guess, in terms of, do you have any questions at all? And anybody got any questions?
Yes, so as we normally do, if anyone used to the format, we open out those listening live. If you've got any questions, please type those into the question section on your meeting control panel. But as we've seen, workbooks, as well as it tracking the sort of classic or traditional activity types like a phone call or a meeting appointment, it's really good at creating these custom activities which might help your organization support any reporting process, or maybe there's a specific KPI that you need to record on the activities you're doing, you and your colleagues are doing. Or maybe, as we've seen, there might be some quality procedure that you want to adhere to, or maybe some industry compliance or legislation means that you've got to track this particular type of information in this particular type of client interaction. So thanks very much, Pete. So let me just go through the questions here. Right, first question from Janice. Can this be used in other areas of workbooks? We have some very specific information we need to collect for our service opportunities.
Yes, is the answer. A very simple answer. But what you can do within the system is apply the same process in terms of creation to any part of the system. So I'm not sure I have different type of opportunities in here, but yes, if you could have a selection when you go to new opportunity, you could have maybe an option there that says new service opportunity and a series of fields that only show when you want a service type opportunity. I guess the best example of that in here is this demo system. They've got some different cases. So if I go into cases, similar to any other area, can you see here over on the left, I've got different types of cases. So a new request to be forgotten, again, a GDPR process. But if I click on this, you can see compared to a normal case, there is some very relevant information that appears on this screen. Some checks that need to be done. Is this a primary contact? Is it an employee that's been with you for the last 6 years and so forth? So there's some assessment there in a request to be forgotten. But you can see here, again, in this example, they've used the type field. So this screen only loads, it's a specific screen to that type of record. So in your example, was it Janice? Then an opportunity of a service type would have lots of selection fields. So you might have tick boxes to say this has been checked, that's been done, different stages and so forth. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, next question from Brian. Can you make so only certain users can record these custom activities?
Yes, yeah, I mean that's normal sharing options. So when I went and created the custom layout, so let me just go and show you that very briefly. So if I go to the layout that I called web meeting, it might be that you don't want certain people to record that type of system, so you can share or not share the information. So you can see this sharing option. I've actually shared this with everyone, but you use your normal groups and user capabilities to be able to control that. You'd probably, in this example, just restrict the template so only it shows for a certain number of team members, for example. Okay.
Okay, I don't think there's any more questions coming through there. If any late questions come through separately via email. So that's it. We're done on this topic, creating custom activities, tasks with Workbooks CRM. If you've got any ideas for future topics, we're going to meet up again same time next week. But if you've got any ideas for future topics for Workbooks that you think would be of interest to the Goldmine community, the Workbooks community, please email us at tim@wizard-systems.com or my colleague Peter at wizard-systems.com, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. So thanks very much for those of you attending live. We'll catch up with you next week for another Workbook session. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye.